In this video, we're going to talk about creating simple macros. Macros allow you to record keystrokes and mouse clicks. As you create a macro and you tell it to record it, everything you do on the keyboard and the mouse will be recorded and can then be used. The benefit of using macros is that you can make a macro of things that are kind of redundant. You're always doing the same thing. So for example, we have this invoice here, and we just talked about using protection. And so all of the green areas we want to be able to delete. And it's a lot of work to select each of these and then hit delete. We could create a macro that will delete all of these for us just by either typing out a command, making a little button to do it, or just choosing it from macros. So the issue though is when you create macros in Excel, you have to save the spreadsheet in a different format. And if you look at the top here of my screen, you will see that it says Chapter 8 Lecture Working.xlsx. That is a non-macro enabled spreadsheet. So if I wanted to create a macro that I can use, I have to save this as a macro enabled worksheet. So we'll talk about that kind of like that at the end. So right now, if you look at my screen, what I need is a developer tab, and you'll see that it's not here. And that's okay because by default, developer is not turned on. So on a PC, you just go up here to the easiest way to do it is to go up here and just click this little down arrow in the quick access. And then I can go down here to more commands. And that will allow me to populate commands up here in the quick access. But what I want to do is customize the ribbon. So over on the left-hand side, you'll see there's all sorts of options. I want to click on Customize Ribbon. And basically what I need to do over on the right-hand side is scroll down until I find the Developer tab. And you'll see that all of these other tabs have little check marks in front of them. So let's say you never used the Draw tab. So you could deselect it. Those functions are still available. It doesn't remove them from your system. It just doesn't make it available to work with. So in order for developer to be available, I just need to click on the little box in front of it and then click OK. And then you'll see that it's at the end of the list. So if I click on developer, there's a few items that we may end up using later. But what I want to do is I want to record a macro. So over here, it says record macro. So I will click on that. And you always want to give it a name. Just as we do with range of names, you can't use any reserved words like the $ or any of that stuff, and no spaces. So here we're going to call delete entries. You can provide a shortcut key. So for example, if I wanted to make it Control-Shift-T, I hold down the Shift key and type in T. And you'll see that now, in order to use this macro, I will have to do Control-Shift-T. Or I could choose it from the list, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. It will save it with this workbook. And if you wanted to, you could provide a little description. So I'll click OK. And then at the very bottom here, you'll see in my status, it's ready, and there's a little square here. And you're not going to see it here because it's outside of my screen, but it's telling you that it's ready to record. Now, right now I'm talking and I'm moving my mouse around, all that kind of stuff. And as long as I don't click my mouse or type on my keyboard, the macro is just sitting in the background waiting. So what I want to do is I'm going to select these first two, and I'm going to delete. And then I'll just select some more. And how much you select is really up to you. You don't have to do it all in one stop. Let's hit delete. So again, the green areas I just put here as a quick way for me to recognize what I needed to delete in this macro. And I have a note here, but let's say you don't have a note there. You may not always put notes, but you should still go and click delete. It's not going to have any problem. So now I have basically selected my cells and I've deleted all that good information. But before I close my macro, it's kind of nice if I'm kind of polite, is to put things back where people can start entering. So right over here at the date, I'm going to click on date. And then I'm going to stop doing the macro. If you don't have the little box down there, I can always hit up here where it says stop recording. Yeah, I don't know why that's showing up. You can go away. So let's just enter something real quick. I'm not going to do everything here. Joe, Cedar Springs, and we'll enter a couple of items. This is just a simple lookup. So you can see, oh, we're just populating the sheet. Check. Now that I look at this, I didn't even do anything for cash, good old-fashioned cash. So we'll just do check, and we'll say thank you for your order. Now, just in an instance of time, I didn't fill everything in, but this is going to show you that the macro will still work. Now, there's two ways that we can actually run a macro, actually three ways. The first way is to hold down the Control, the Shift, and the T key, and that'll delete everything. I'm going to see if I can undo it. Nope, can't undo. So let's just put some more stuff in here. We'll put Grand Rapids. And, oh, let's see, 21 and 31. These are just using lookups. There we go. A second way of running a macro is to choose it from the list. You go up here where it says macros, and I click, and I'll have my list. And if I want to run this macro, I just click run, and it would delete everything. I don't want to have to type everything, so I'm just going to hit cancel. A third way is to assign a button to it. And to do that, you need to do and work in the controls group. If you're on a Mac, you'll actually have an item that says insert button. So here we're going to do insert, and then we're going to choose the very first one here, and my mouse is kind of hovering over it, but it does say button. So under form control, we'll do button. So you want to click on that, and I'm going to just draw my button. And it's going to say, well, what do I want it to do? I want it to actually do the delete entries. I'll click OK. And then I can name my button, delete items. So now if I click this little button here, you'll see that all my items go away. So we'll just put something here and we'll delete it again. So three ways of deleting your macros: using a shortcut, choosing it from the macro button, or making your own little buttons. Now these are kind of neat because then you could have 4 or 5 little buttons and you could use them as need be. Now, if I go to the macro button, this will show me my list of macros. I have one right here called delete entries. I could edit it. Now when I edit it, basically what I'm doing is it's going to open up Visual Basic. And I got to scooch this into the screen area. There we go. Just give me a moment here while and this is all the fun stuff that the macro did. You can see that I selected a range, and then I hit clear, and another range and clear, and then you will see that I went over and I selected F6. That was to put it back at the date. So this is the macro. Now, for the homework you're going to be doing in this class, they're not going to have you save this as a macro-enabled document. What they actually want you to do is to take this information from the Visual Basic, and they want you to copy it. So I'm going to copy it. And then I'm just going to close this. Then over here in the macro tab, they're going to have you paste it. And then the software, the MyLab, will actually grade that for you. Now, if I go back to developer, doesn't really matter where I'm at. I do use macros and edit. If you know a little bit about Visual Basic, you could go and delete and make changes to it. So let's say I forgot to choose that first range. I did F6 to F6, and I forgot to include F7. I could edit that, or I wanted to actually select F6 through F8. I can make changes to it. Just realize unless you're really comfortable working with some of the coding, I probably wouldn't do too much in this area. So I'm going to hit close. And so that is basically working with some very simple macros. Now at this point, if I were to just close my, well, let's say I want to hit save, I'm going to get a message saying, if I were to save this right now, that macro was going to go away. It's going to delete all of my macros. So I'm going to hit go back. So if you want to, let me cancel here. If I want to save this spreadsheet and I want to actually be able to use the macros, I have to save it as a macro enabled spreadsheet. So I go to save. If I right now say save and erase features, I don't want to do that. So right here, to save this book with these features, meaning the Visual Basic, that is the macro, I could just choose save. If I hit go back, you will see that it brings me to this screen. And then I could choose from this list the save as type. I could then macro enabled workbook, and it would then be available for us to use. So you do want to be a little careful. If you're playing around with macros and you don't want to keep them, then just hit save. And I'm going to say save and erase features, and then it's going to remove those features. If this is something that you do want to use, then you'll need to save it as a macro enabled document. The thing to remember, though, is many companies frown or have limitation on using macros, since it does allow an outside system to access it. So you want to be kind of wary of that when you're working. You say, okay, is this allowed, etc. So I'm just going to hit save and erase feature. So it's going to get rid of those macros. So now if I click this little button here, you're going to see cannot run macro, because guess what? It's not there anymore. If I go to the macros button, it's not there. So it does literally get rid of your macros. So that's why for the homework, you click macro, and they have you just paste it in here. Okay. So that is working, simple working with macros.